If you're starting a garden for the first time this year, then this video is for you. I want to save you the frustration, the disappointment, even the I'm gonna quit experience that so many new gardeners face. So learn these 10 things with me now so that you can be a pro way faster than I was. Lesson number 1, setup matters most. Oh man, did we learn this the hard way. The very first year we started our garden, we literally just dug into the ground and it was a terrible, terrible mess. We were gardening on a slope and within just a few days we had a major rainstorm and literally every seed we planted just washed right down the hill into the drain. The next time we started a garden, we didn't pay any attention to the pathways or to the borders of the garden, and all of our beds got beat up by weed eaters and lawnmowers that were tossing grass constantly into the raised beds. It wasn't until my third garden that I finally got the setup right, and it made gardening so much easier. By the way, if you want the step-by-step to set up your garden the way I do, you can find it in my book, Kitchen Garden Revival. I'll put a link to it right below this video. Lesson number 2, you're gonna eat differently. From the very first year we started a garden, our meals started to look different. You're no longer just gonna have spaghetti or tacos. You're now gonna have sprout sandwiches or wraps with kale and Swiss chard. You're not just going to have sodas, you're going to have smoothies and fresh juices. Your teas are going to come from the garden. When I first started a garden, I thought I was going to replace my exact meals with things I grew from the garden. What I've realized over the years is that it's the garden that dictates what my meals become. Over the years, my meals have started to really change and adapt to the things that grow best in my own garden, and the same's going to happen for you too. Lesson number 3 is it doesn't have to take a long time. When we first started our garden, I imagined myself homesteading and living off the grid. Now, fast forward 10 years later, I've got 4 teenagers and I live in a suburb. I barely spend a few minutes in the garden every day, but still that's plenty. Once I got this set up right and figured out my planting system, I designed a way that I could use the garden every single day without spending all day taking care of it. And you can do the same. Don't hold back from starting your garden or going all in on your garden because you're afraid it's going to take up all your time. If you do it right the first time and get the setup and the plants going great, then it's only going to take 5 minutes a day to prune it, harvest, and eat from it. And that's exactly what I talk about in my book, The 5-Minute Gardener. It's all about having just little small tasks you do every day, and the cumulative effect of each of those 5 minutes really makes a difference without having to take up all your life or turn you into a homesteader. Lesson number 4, failure is a part of gardening. Don't be ashamed of some dead plants. I've learned it the hard way. If I want to have lots of healthy, thriving plants, it's going to take a couple of seasons of doing the exact opposite before I get there. Listen, gardening is a skill and we can't expect to immediately be great at it. Not only does it require a lot of our own knowledge on the way plants work and what they need to thrive, but it's also going to take a lot of help from this thing called Mother Nature. You need the timing to be just right. You need the weather to be a certain way. You need a certain number of hours of sunshine and rain, and you need the air evaporation rate to be just right too. There are so many factors that go into gardening success, so don't take it personally when your plant decides to die on you. Instead of seeing this as a failure, mark it down as a lesson. Now you know how not to do it, so you're one step closer to doing it right. Lesson number 5, leaves are the easiest. When my husband and I started garden, we headed straight to the hardware store and bought ourselves some nice big tomato plants. And we completely set ourselves up for failure. Fast forward 2-3 months later, and whatever grew on those spindly little plants got eaten by the neighborhood raccoon. It wasn't until a few years later that my good friend Allison loaned me her lettuce seeds. My little girls tossed it out all over our new garden beds in Houston, Texas, and we were literally eating lettuce for 6 months, every single day from the garden. This helped me realize something that I should have known from the beginning, that leaves are the easiest. So if you want to ride the training wheels, if you will, of gardening, then you should start trying to grow herbs and lettuce greens first. They're the easiest plants to grow and they'll give you lots of success right from the beginning. I cover this concept in my book, Leaves, Roots, and Fruit. It literally takes you from easy to a little bit harder to hardest of all, so that you can get some quick wins when you start to garden and advance from there. Lesson number 6, pests are just part of it. Listen, if you want to have an organic garden, then you're going to be sharing that garden with some wildlife. We live in a culture that really wants to separate animals from plants. But in nature, it's really not possible. So if you're growing some great, delicious food in your yard, anywhere in your space, there's going to be wildlife that wants to enjoy the buffet just like you do. You can learn to live in harmony with all kinds of wildlife in your garden by setting up native plants and pollinator garden spaces, basically giving all that wildlife a distraction and other things that they can eat instead of your garden plants. I freaked out at the first sign of pests in my garden, and over the years, I've learned that they're just simply part of it. I no longer stress about it, I never spray, and I just plant enough so that they can have some and I can have some too. Lesson number 7, plants want to grow. I've met with so many clients who literally swear that their plants hate them. They think their plants are literally protesting and will not grow for them. But the opposite is actually true. If you watch the way that plants interact in nature, plants desperately want to live. In fact, in my second book, I say plants are literally dying to live. They want to survive. They don't just want to survive. They want to thrive. They want to make hundreds, if not thousands of seeds so that their type can eventually take over. If you start to see plants in this way, you realize that instead of fighting against them and just begging them to grow, you can simply just work alongside them. Plants within themselves are literal miracles. They have everything inside their tiny little seed that they'll need to survive and grow and even produce for the next season. So our job as gardeners is not to struggle against these plants, but to just give them the exact conditions they need to do their magic. Lesson number 8, the garden makes the year so much more meaningful. My first year when I started the garden, I only gardened in the summer. In fact, June, July, and August were the only months of the year that I associated with gardening. But over the years, I've realized that the garden is part of every single month of the year. January is for planting. February and March is for planting out my first seeds. April and May are for huge, big, abundant salads day after day. June, July, and August are for these huge overflowing harvest baskets of tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and beans. The fall is for more salads and root crops like carrots and beets. And then even November and December are reserved for these greens and nutritious harvests from the garden that are so special because they get fewer and farther between. The garden completely reorients my yearly calendar and helps me associate certain foods and tastes and experience with every single month that has nothing to do with a national holiday and is so much more meaningful. Lesson number 9, always be thinking 2 months ahead. Oh my goodness. First of all, my very first season, I didn't even think to start a garden until July 4th. I mean, I was literally in the middle of summer when I was like, hey, let's start a summer garden. A little late, my friend. We have this joke within my family that I'm a JIT kind of person. JIT stands for just in time. And let me tell you, it's not great to do that with the garden. When you wake up in June and you're ready to have a June garden, you're already too late. In fact, in the garden, I've learned that I need to be thinking 2 months ahead of the month that I'm dreaming of in the garden. So if I'm thinking of tomatoes and peppers and watermelon in June, I need to be buying the seeds and planting those seeds 2 months before that. If I want to have lettuces in the middle of April, I need to be buying and planting seeds in February. And believe it or not, if I want to have salads and things in the fall, I need to be buying and planting those in the summer. Gardening has made me a more organized person. I know you can't tell from other parts of my life, but the garden really has restructured my mind and helped me to always be thinking 2 months ahead, because I know if I don't, I'm going to completely miss the season. Lesson number 10, gardening is not just a hobby, it's a lifelong thing. Gardening was something I thought I would just do for one summer, or maybe just when my kids were little. But what I've realized is that the garden is a human right. It's an essential human experience. If I'm eating, I should be gardening, because there are things that really should not be shipped. And there are things that money just can't buy. Things like sprouts and microgreens. Even if you got to a farmer's market and bought them from a farmer that harvested those things that morning, they're still not as fresh as they should be. And they could be if you grew them yourself. Even if you buy lettuces that are locally grown, they're still not as fresh or delicious as they would be if you grew them in your own garden. The more I got into gardening, the more I realized gardening wasn't just like knitting or painting or doing yoga or playing tennis. It wasn't just an add-on to my life to make it a little bit more fun. It was actually essential to my life. The garden was full of foods that I needed to balance out my diet, to keep me healthy, and to nurture my body season after season. And the garden right outside my back door could provide something that I just couldn't get anywhere else. So there you have it. These are the 10 things I wish I could have told myself 10 years ago when I first started gardening. I would have saved myself so much disappointment, so many moments where I thought I was a complete loser in the garden. Hopefully now I've saved you from a lot of stress and frustration too, and definitely saved you from that I'm just gonna quit moment. If you don't take any other lesson from my lessons, I hope you'll remember this one. Gardening really does make life so much better, and it's absolutely worth all the effort you'll have to put forward to gain the skill. Speaking of skills, we've got tons that we're gonna teach you over the next few months so that you can make the most of your garden, whether you're just getting started or you've been at this for quite some time. So you're gonna wanna hit that subscribe button so you know every single time we drop another video. And if you've got a friend or family member who's thinking about starting a garden this year, would you do me a huge favor and share this video with them? Let's save them the frustration and the I'm gonna quit moment too. Tell me in the comment which lesson means the most to you, or which lesson you've already learned yourself. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna head out to the garden because I'm sure it's got another lesson to teach me today. I'll see you next time.